Friends, when things go well, people forget God. That's just the way of life. Sometimes you have people who come into synagogue and you know something is not okay because they never come. But when they come, there's something wrong. Because synagogue is a place that we come to get chizuk, etc. If there's a problem, we see this phenomenon, unfortunately, happening throughout generations, throughout history, but even now in Israel, because of the conflict, a lot of people come close to religion. It's haram that we have to go through this for people to come close. That's just the way it is. Actually, I would like to bring a beautiful pshat I read years ago. I don't remember where I read it, but about this week's parasha, something incredible. In this week's parasha, it starts Parshat Shemot. We talk about the transition between the family style into a nation, the Netziv explains. But here the pasuk starts, Ve'ele Shemot b'nei Yisrael habayim mitzrayim. These are the people who came to Egypt. Et Yaakov ishu beto ba'u. Yaakov came with his family, and then you have the incredible 12 Shevatim. Each one was a different derech, a different avodat Hashem. Each one was a leader in his own form. You have Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Issachar, Zevulun, Binyamin, Dan, Naftali, Gad, Asher. All these incredible 12 Shevatim. And then the pasuk tells you, Vayamot Yosef v'chol echav v'chol adorahu. That generation of leaders, because they had children, they had grandchildren, they had great-grandchildren, they led this generation. If you ask who was the leader of the Jewish people at the time, we probably would say Yosef was definitely leading the 12 brothers and their children and grandchildren. Yehuda must have been very influential. Well, Yaakov above when he was alive. But you always have the next generation of leaders. What we don't know is who was leading after Vayamot Yosef v'chol echav v'chol adorahu. After Yosef and this whole generation, his brothers and this generation passed, who was the leader? The next leader we're going to know is Moshe Rabbeinu, but much, much later, hundreds of years later. The Rambam tells us that the father of Moshe also was a leader. Fine. But there's a gap between Yosef and his brothers and the next leaders, either Moshe or his father. We don't know who was leading the Bnei Israel. Was there a leader of Bnei Israel? So the probable answer was probably one of the grandchildren of Yosef or one of the grandchildren of Yehuda was the leader of the Jewish people. But we don't know the name. We don't know what he did. We don't know anything about this. Do you know why? Says the pasuk, Uvnei Israel paru vayishretzu vayirbu vayatzmu bim'od me'od. Bnei Israel had tremendous success, material success. They had children, they had made a lot of money. Vayirbu vayatzmu bim'od me'od. They became very wealthy. And you know what happens? That was the leader of the Klal Israel. This was the leader. It was not a person because nobody cared about that person. Because when things go well, people don't care about the leader, the spiritual leader. They don't need the spiritual leader. They only need the spiritual leader when things don't go well. And since things went very well, Vayirbu vayatzmu bim'od me'od, that was the leader of the Bnei Israel. The leader of the Bnei Israel was Forbes, was the stock market, was the real estate. It's in the same sentence. It tells you Moshe, Yosef died and this whole generation died. And who was then taking over? That's who took over. Because nobody cared about the grandchild of Yosef and Yehuda or Issachar. Nobody cared about them. We don't even know the name. And because they cared so much about these things and not at all about the spiritual aspect, that's why they went down. And they went down until they needed a real leader like Moshe Rabbeinu to take them up. That's a very strong call. Because in America, a lot of people are very comfortable and they forget about the leaders of spirituality, the connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. If we can't connect our physical situation, our material situation with the spiritual, then it brings, unfortunately, what these coming parashiot are going to bring. Shabbat Shalom.